This is a probability scale. Probabilities go from 0 to 1 or from 0 to 100%, depending on how we are recording our probabilities. So probabilities can be recorded as fractions, decimals, or percentages. So in the middle here we would have either a half or 0.5 on this side, and if we were using percentages then we would have 50% here. So we need to know some terms that help describe the probabilities on this scale. So if you have a probability that is 0, then that means that this is an impossible thing. It cannot happen. If we're up this end and have a probability of 1, it means that it is certain. And if we're in the middle here, it means you've got, if you like, an even chance. There's an even chance that it could happen or could not happen. So anything that's in this region here would be described as being unlikely. And in this region here, it would be described as being likely. So let's just add in some examples of each of these. So something that's impossible, you can't throw a dice and get 10, not your normal dice anyway. Whereas you can be pretty certain that there will be a Wednesday next week. Yes, something very drastic is happening. There will be a Wednesday next week. And an example of something that has an even chance, the most common one that we would think about is flipping a coin, and you've got an even chance of getting either a head or a tail. So something that would be unlikely would be winning the lottery. Okay, so your actual percentage chance of winning the lottery is 0.0000007%. That's how tiny your chance is. So that would be right down here at this end of our probability scale. And then an example of something that might be likely is that it will rain in October. In this country, that's pretty likely. So we're now going to move on to understanding how we calculate probabilities. As we've just discussed, they can be shown as decimals, fractions, or percentages, but if you're actually calculating them, you're usually going to calculate them as fractions. And fractions, as we know, have a top and a bottom. So the bottom of your fraction, your probability fraction, will have the total number of outcomes, is the way that they normally express that. And then on the top, you're going to put the number of ways that the specific event you're interested in could happen. So let's look at it in an example here to make that clearer. So we've got a bag that has 12 coloured balls and 3 are red. And we want to work out the probability of picking a red ball. We need our fraction. So the total number of possible outcomes. So there are 12 balls in there. So there are 12 possibilities for what you might pick out. So that goes on the bottom. And on the top, there are only 3 that actually are red, so there's only 3 ways that you can get a red ball. So our probability is 3/12. Of course, it's a fraction, so we should always simplify that. So that is actually a quarter as a probability. Now sometimes it's quite easy to work out what all the possible outcomes are, the total number that you need for the bottom. Other times you're going to need to put a bit more work in. So one of the ways that you might work out what all the possible outcomes are to simply create a list. So here we have an example of what you can have for dinner. You can either have ham, chicken or beef, and then you can have that with either chips, mash or a jacket potato. So if we use an H for ham, C for chicken and B for beef, and then we'll use CH for chips because we've already used C, M for mash and J for jacket potato. So now we can create a list of all the possibilities. So with the ham, you could have chips, or you could have mash, or you could have jacket potatoes. With the chicken, you could have chips, you could have mash, you could have jacket potatoes. With the beef, you could have chips, you could have mash, you could have jacket potatoes. Can we see now that we've got 9 total possible outcomes? So then we could go on to work out a probability with that. Okay, so if we were asked the probability that somebody has dinner that is got chicken in it, so we look for all the ones that have got chicken. So there are 3 ways that that could happen, but there are 9 possibilities altogether. So that's 3 out of 9, which would mean that the probability of picking someone who's picked chicken for their meal would be 1/3. If we've got sort of more possibilities, you might want to use a two-way table like this. So in this example, we're needing to work out what all the possible scores are if you throw 2 dice and then add the numbers together. So just to explain how this is working, just in case you're not sure. So here we've got the answer 6 because 3 was on one dice, 3 was on the other dice, and they make 6 when you add them together. It's not the only way you can get a score of 6. You can see there are other ways. So for example, this one up here is when you have 5 and 1 added together, so that's another way that you can score 6. So if we wanted to know the probability of scoring 10, we need to form up our fraction and we need our bottom. So we can see in this table all the possibilities, and if you work that out, we've got a 6 by 6 chart. Don't count the blue ones, that's the question part. So there are 36 possible scores and combinations. So that's the bottom of our fraction. Then if we go back and look, how many possibilities are there for scoring 10? There are 3 different ways there for scoring 10. So that's 3 out of 36, which if we simplify it is 1 out of 12.